Hello, everyone, and welcome to Make an Accelerator Work for You. I am Ashley Wilson. I am the moderator of this discussion today. I am the founder and CEO of AuditMate. We are the first ever elevator and escalator auditing software. I participated in StartOut Growth Lab cohort 6, as well as am now an EIR for the program and have also done Morgan Stanley's Accelerator program. We are waiting for a few more folks to join us today, but I also have Corina here. Corina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Corina Hierro. I am a startup scout at Techstars. I am also a Techstars alum, as my previous role at a startup was part of the workforce development program back in 2021. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So while we wait for other folks to get started today, can you tell us a bit more about the accelerator that you work for?
Yeah, so Techstars is a global investor. So we are typically startups' first paycheck. We fund them with up to $120,000. It's a 3-month extensive program. And the one that I did was the workforce development program here in Denver back in 2021. It was an amazing experience. And may I remind you, Techstars is a network for life. So Techstars has a huge network of investors and mentors. To be exact, it's about 20,000 investors, 7,000 mentors. So when founders talk about Techstars or alum talk about Techstars, we join because of the network, not so much for the money. So I believe it's an amazing program to go through if you're a first-time founder, because you get hands-on help with mentors, with your MVP. We prepare you for demo day. We help you with all the tools and resources needed to run a company.
Amazing. So for accelerators, it can be a massive time commitment. I know when I was at Growth Lab, I usually just set aside Wednesdays. And I made that like my executive day. Aydian, amazing.
Hey, so
Hi.
the life of a startup, just back-to-backs. My apologies.
No problem at all. We've just kicked it off and introduced ourselves. I would love if you introduced yourself, please. Oh,
I'm not hearing you, Aydian. I think you're muted.
There we go. Hi.
Perfect.
My name's Aydian Dowling. My pronouns are he, him. They were, I don't know, I put them in my profile, but they didn't show up. Yeah, so I am the CEO and co-founder of Trace, and we are a mobile app for trans and non-binary folks to both document their transition and build a safe community online. And did we go over the accelerators we've been in?
Please do.
Awesome. So I have been part of 2 different generator beta program and their G beta program, and then their flagship program out of Madison, Wisconsin. And yeah, I'm excited to have our conversation today, answer any questions, and yeah, to be of value.
Amazing. For that. I think I will kick off talking about some compatibility. One way to increase the likelihood of getting value out of an accelerator is making sure that you're choosing the accelerator that's right for you. Aydian, can you tell us a bit about how to find an accelerator that's the right fit?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Ashley. So I think you have to really think about what stage you're at. Right. And so I can, give my perspective from where I was at. So I am a non-technical founder who has never worked in tech before. I needed to join something that, and look for accelerators that were open to taking really like first-time founders and being okay with teaching me the ways, as one may call it. And so that's kind of where I was started. Also, just thinking about like what stage am I at, right? And so I was planning, and we did build a product that we knew was not going to be making money off the bat. We knew that we were building somewhat of a social platform, and so you need people. And so we were just thinking about, okay, so who's going to be able to be okay with that, be okay that we are, we're going to start slow and then have our hockey stick once we turn on revenue. So that's also another great thing that I was looking for, is like, okay, who's worked with people in my, right? I know a lot of people talk about like really big ones, like, everyone's like, oh, Y Combinator. And I'm like, I feel like I wouldn't fit in there, honestly. Like, even that it would have the prestige and I'd get 500,000 and go to California. But it's like, I feel like I would get lost in the sauce because I wouldn't have been prepared. You know what I mean? As an individual. And that's a me thing. Like, some people, maybe you'd be like, I'd fit right in. Like, that's awesome. You should totally go for it. But for me, it was really just about like, where am I at in my knowledge and understanding of what I'm getting into? What can the accelerator offer me, right? To make it so that when I graduate that accelerator, I feel like the accelerator is now something I've grown past. And then like, what stage was my company at?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm also a non-technical founder, and when I first joined StartOut's Growth Lab, finding community was like the utmost important thing for me, and especially to find queer community, right? It's really hard out there to be like, I'm in tech, but I don't want to be in tech in that way, right? And so being able to find a community of people that's like, I feel supported, I have people like me, and that you can ask questions and in a safe way, right? I was like, I have a college degree and I have no idea what y'all are talking about, right? Like, I feel so ill-equipped right now. And StartOut was just such a safe place to land. And then once I grew, and then, financials started to get so much more important. And like the financial modeling that you need, like post seed stage, which is when I joined Morgan Stanley. Like, that was my deficit at that point in my life or career life. Corina, do you have anything you want to add about compatibility and choosing the right accelerator program?
Yeah, well, as part of the founding team at the last startup that I was with, we went through two accelerators. I don't know if you've heard of E for All, and then we did Techstars. So yeah, picking a right accelerator for you. I mean, especially if you're new to the space. I mean, I come from the news industry. I had no clue about anything tech startups, how to raise money or anything like that. It's really important to get connected with an accelerator that fits your stage. If we were, barely in the beginning, barely getting connected to investors or mentors, these accelerators really help you gain that community, like you mentioned, where you can fit in, and it's not as intimidating to be able to go through the program, especially when you're new. So
Yeah, absolutely. So something I hear all of the time is you get in what you put in from accelerator programs. I've been in cohorts that two companies had wildly different experiences and got wildly different levels of values out of the same cohort. So, Corina, do you have any advice for getting the most out of an accelerator program? And how do you get prepared for walking into these mentor meetings, walking into these info sessions? Sometimes you go to an info session and you're like, I don't care about this. I don't need to know about this. But there's always something to learn. So, what is your advice for these founders?
Yeah, my advice is to do your homework. So, I mean, the tools are going to be there for you, the connections, the mentors, the sessions, everything, but you have to do your homework. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the time to be able to do your research on for example, your managing director, their investing style, the mentors that you're talking to and selecting to help you in this process. So a lot of it does land on your hands, because you always want to be well informed. You don't want to be like a deer in the headlights, showing up to the mentor meetings and being able to really get to know your connections.
Absolutely. Aydian, any tips?
Yeah, I mean, echoing everything Corina said, 100%. And I think also, like, I think, just giving my perspective, hopefully that will be helpful, is just, I went in knowing that this is it. Like, this is all I'm doing. This is my, this is my eating, breathing. Hi, Kelly. This is my eating, breathing, sleeping. This is my next, and so I put everything in, and similar to what you said, Ashleigh, like, some people were like, yeah, that was cool. And I was just like, are you kidding? I had so much to do. I was like working nonstop. Like, I met with so many people. So, make sure it's a good time for you. Like, if that time that accelerator is going on, and it's just, that's the time that you're not going to be available, or you're having something go on at the company, like, maybe just wait, you know what I mean? Find a different one, or wait till the next time that they have a cohort go through,
Yeah, absolutely. Kelly, welcome to the stage. We're so happy to have you. We are talking right now about getting in what you put in. So if you maybe want to introduce yourself and then tell us how you can get the most out of an accelerator program.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, so I'm Kelly McDonald. I am the former CEO and founder of Kindu, which is a influencer marketing company that had some technology behind it. I sold it to a company called Scipio just about 2 years ago now, and recently left there, and I'm now a product lead at Rippling. I was also at 500 and Startup Growth Lab before that, and I can tell you that I think what you put in is definitely what you get out. It's like a big buffet. As many plates as you can fill up and go back time and time again, the better you're going to be off of it. But definitely networking, finding your closest, advisors, and hopefully investors in some cases as well. I know that's definitely some things I got out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I learned, especially at Morgan Stanley. So in the Morgan Stanley your weekly meetings at Morgan Stanley, this is their multicultural innovation lab. Oh, it's now the Inclusive Ventures Lab. They just changed their name. So you go into these meetings and there's like 6 people in there, 6 extremely smart, like analysts, someone that's building your financial model, your entrepreneur in residence. And after my first couple meetings, everybody was just talking, right? You have all these extremely smart people and everyone's talking. And I was like, this is not going to work. Like, it's not gonna. In the next meeting, I was like, okay, here's my agenda. These are the 4 things we're talking about. You're leaving this room with today. And they were like, and I'm like, I'm not leaving this room until you answer these questions. So our meeting might take 3 hours. And that totally changed the tone of like really owning those meetings, because everyone in that room wants to help you. And so when you're like, here's exactly what I need today, they're like, great, fantastic. So that definitely helped me. Equity as a payment. This is something that is a part of some accelerator programs. Is it worth it? Kelly, do you think it's worth it? You had an exit, so you know better than most of us. What does it look like at the end?
At the end. So first and foremost, I definitely would say it's worth it. And if I did it all over again, I would definitely do it again, right? To start there. But there is always going to be sticker shock when you get to the end and you see like exactly how much, 6% converts at, especially comparatively to maybe some of your other investors who maybe, put in less than the, accelerator, et cetera, but in both effort and dollars, and when you're looking at that, it's kind of like, you kind of feel bad for a moment there, right? That said, though, that branding and the network that you're going to have forever is very, very helpful to you. Prior to even working at and starting my own startup, I had also worked for a 500 startup company, and we were 5 years in and we were still hiring people off of that, And so I think that, you're always going to have that recognition and badge that's going to help you long term. So it's definitely worth it. And you get the doors open that you want open at times.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear it was worth it even after an exit. That
Yeah.
makes me hopeful. Corina, what are your thoughts?
No, yeah. I think there's a power to having a network. And like I mentioned, Techstars has a network of 20,000 investors, 7,000 mentors, 8,000 founders, 1,500 community programs. So this is a network that you gain for life. So that equity portion, yes, it might seem like a lot, but it's definitely worth it because these are connections and people that are going to be in your network forever.
Yeah, totally. So I'm going to shift the question just a little bit for you, Aydian. Just because an accelerator takes equity does not mean that it's more valuable than a program that does not take equity, like Growth Lab, right? We've had some folks come through the program that are like, I've done programs with equity and I didn't get as much value out of as much as I did from Growth Lab. So is that a way that we should be judging accelerator programs? Is like based on, investment or based on the equity that they take? Does that mean
Yeah,
they're more worth it?
It's a great question. And I think it's like a combination of like what we've said all here together and Kelly's answer of just like, and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you got a lot out of your accelerator. And so the percentage was like, yeah, it's a lot, but like when I look at my roster of everybody who's getting something, that's okay. Like they're supposed to be in that top echelon of like people who really helped me get to this exit, right? And so if you are, and I've been through which was free as well, and I felt like that, I was like, well, that's that I learned a lot out of that. You know what I mean? Like they could have been like, we're gonna take just a little bit, just a little something out of that, and they didn't, and so I think that like that isn't going to be the value. Like, you make an accelerator work for you by working with the accelerator, like kind of what you said, Ashleigh, like it's like they're there to teach you and help you, but like it's like they're there to teach you, but you're also like the principal of the school, because it's like you need to tell people like what you need and then put those people that you have access to in the correct classrooms, and then it'll be great. But if you're just like there and you're the principal and all the teachers are like, I got all this information, but I don't know what to do with it, you know what I mean? Then you're not going to get anything.
So yeah, there's
Absolutely.
definitely that intentionality behind, going through an accelerator, putting in the time. Like I remember when we were going through the Techstars workforce development program, we had to divide, because you still have a company to run and you're investing 30, 40, 45 hours a week into the accelerator. So you have to be really conscious about who's going to be joining, who's going to be working, but it's all really doable and it's all worth it, I promise.
Yeah, I think that brings up a great point. Let's talk about time commitment and how we make that work, right? As founders, we're already working a lot, right? And then you add an accelerator program, and I know at times it can feel like, do I need to do this extra work to present this to an EIR in a way that they can digest it to be able to get the help when I feel like I'm already so behind? Um, what did y'all think about the time commitment and how you made that work for you?
I actually have a lot on that one that I can add, because I think, we actually were at Growth Lab first, and at the time Growth Lab had an actual location where we were going into the office and needed to be there a certain number of days of the week, etc. And, and had sessions that were required that we would attend. It was great for me at the time because we were very early as a business then. So I really needed all the help and attention I could get. And then when I went to 500, our demo day was originally scheduled a week before the pandemic shut everything down. And so it was started out as a 6-month program, or 3-month program rather, went into like a 1.5-year long program for us, because we opted to then move to the later date instead of pitching then. And then that date got pushed. And, you know, the whole time we were doing practice sessions and going to the other options. And it, you know, just kind of felt like the longest accelerator ever sometimes. But, you know, we could have stopped at any point, but we kept making it work because we were still meeting with mentors. We were still getting access to sessions that we would have been graduated from already. And, you know, sometimes doing it a second time doesn't hurt. I've also done YC Startup School twice, right? And the second time just for fun, because I wanted to, you know, make that time to get better at my business as a founder. So I think like whatever you can, it's an ongoing journey, and you kind of have to keep developing yourself in order to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chris at Growth Labs talks all the time about working on your business instead of in your business. And accelerator programs sometimes really force you to do that. And like that discomfort really pushes you into being the executive that you need to be, but it's not without time commitment. Aydian, Corina, anything you'd like to add about time? How to spend it wisely?
Go ahead, Aydian.
I was gonna say you go. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just honestly, like, I just worked a lot, like, just like no sugarcoating. Like, that's all I did on the weekends and at night, and all, like, you know, luckily I was full time at, you know, I was doing the business anyway. So it was just like, it was just nonstop, you know, just not trying to, but again, like, I felt like I got a lot out of it, you know? And so I don't have regrets for all the time I put into it. So yeah, but also like,
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming for sure. So that's why I had mentioned that you have to pick and select like who's going to be able to be, you know, present in some of the meetings or sessions, and who's going to be, you know, running the business. But I mean, for me, I remember, yeah, it was a lot of work. And I was also working weekends, but the material and the information was really, really helpful. This all you end up implementing in the business. So it's all for the good of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So content. A lot of accelerators are like, what do you want to work on? What are your goals? What's something that you need to be working on? And I think often the go-to is like build revenue, build revenue, build revenue. One thing that feels like this mysterious, opaque part of the business is valuation. And Kelly, I know you have a lot of thoughts about utilizing an accelerator program to kind of siphon as much information as you can from all the smart people that participate in accelerator programs. Will you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. Because I definitely think that as you know, leave the accelerator and you start fundraising and you are, you know, continuing on that journey, you know, not only during that hopefully was a short burst of time for everybody, if you're lucky, but then when you go back and you have to raise again at some point, because usually an accelerator, you're maybe going to raise a pre-seed or a seed. So when you get to the A round, it's going to be extremely important that you had the right number and the right valuation when you were going for your seed. Too big, you might end up raising a down round if you're lucky to raise it all, right? Too little, you're not going to have enough runway to get there. And I think there's like this delicate balance. And really, this is where an accelerator can shine, is giving you some advice of like what other people who have similar businesses to you and how they're valuing it. Because really, valuation a lot of times is like, that's how people come up with it. And they're, especially in early stages, right? You're kind of market sizing and looking at what other people are doing, what things are going for right now, and what you can raise today at and what you could raise 2 years ago and what you could raise 3 years ago are wildly different from each other. And so, you know, really making sure that you're going off of, you know, what is going to help you get to that next stage, and, you know, not giving up too much, etc. It's hard work. And so utilizing people who've been in the show already, other founders, the mentors there, they're going to know and be able to help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I really love that. And so much like to your point of finger in the air, so much of that is just having the logic really clearly laid out so that you can defend it and you can continue to like optimize it and build upon it. And there are metrics to actually track. And so when someone says, I think you're worth X, you can be like, no, I'm worth Y, and here is the reason behind it. Like, here is the math and the logic. And it may be different than yours, but we can now have a discussion and a negotiation with facts and metrics instead of like, well, I feel it's this and I feel it's that, and I'm an investor and I'm smarter than you. And you're like, but you're not. You don't.
Exactly. And I think like with you, when you see it with folks too, when you look at, the conversations of you're really off, or they're not going to tell you that you're off. Like you're going to get that conversation if they're interested and they're like, you're close enough that they feel they can negotiate, a little bit here or there on the pricing. But if you should be at 7 and you're at 12, like they're just going to smile and say, oh, let me take this to my group on Monday and I'm going to get back to you. We've all had that conversation with an investor where they're like, oh, I love this. My guys are going to love this. I'm going to present on Monday. I'll get back to you. And on Tuesday, they're like, ooh, we had to pass. And they don't tell you why. They don't tell you that you're too much. But, if you were at the right pricing, then they could get enough of their share, then, there's a negotiation to happen then. But when you're way off, you're off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think something for me that I got a ton, my valuation is a complex model, right? Like that's the thing that I'm like, talk about your model, talk about why your model makes sense, talk about your unit economics and leverage these people to the wonderful people in our lives. To really look at all of the areas of your business. And that's something I sat down with Morgan Stanley, and it forced me to really look at my ideal customer profile, right? How are leads coming into the business? How do you know that? Like if you add more of X, does that actually increase revenue? And so my version of the valuation is the financial model. Aydian, what is your like, this is the thing for me that when you go into a program, like make sure you're talking about it?
Yeah, again, I think like for me, because I'm a first timer and wasn't in the world, I think I needed to know all of the things. All the things need to be known. And I think like what I just tried to do was get the information, even if I couldn't get the answer, like what's the information I need to get to, right? And then really trying to think more into like, okay, well, let's hone in on this one thing, right? So like for me, it was like monetization. That was like, how are we going to monetize the platform? Because this is a social network that nobody pays for social networks right now. You know what I mean? Like you pay for some, right? But if you pay for them, they're usually related to, like dating or something. And our app is not a dating app, right? So it's like, how are we going to get to there? So that was a lot of like, what's the business? Like, what's the actual business? Like, yes, we have the product. We have, the mission, like what we're going to do, but like, what's the business of the company? You know what I mean? And so we honed in a lot on that. Finding valuation was definitely like hard because like in the social world, it's just like your comparisons are like Facebook and, Instagram and everybody who grew at 1,500,000 percentage over the course of 18 months, right? And you're like, well, if we had that, that'd be great. But like my population we're never gonna grow that quick just based on what we offer. You know what I mean? And like, it wouldn't be good for us if we grew that quick, right? And so like, just really figuring out like that's what we went in with, was like, how are we going to monetize this strategy? Like, what's the business plan? And then, when we think about our comparables, like who really is actually a good comparable? You know what I mean? And then trying to dig into that of like, okay, well, what did they even raise? Like, and then what Kelly was saying was like, 9 million. And it's like, it's good at like climate to raise $9 million in the seed round. You know what I mean? Like, so I think just like, you know, trying to be, for us, just like being realistic of like, what do we know? What do we need to know? And if we can't get the information now, what's like, what things in, you know what I mean? Because unfortunately, like it wasn't a year and a half. You know what I mean? Like, it was only this, you know, these 12 weeks and these certain amount of hours, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I really love that a lot. And especially being able to ask those really hard questions of monetization. Would you pay for this? If, you know, and when you talk to your EIRs, you can talk to them as if they were an investor and you're like, does this make sense? Here are my known variables. Here's my unknown. Would you want a second conversation with me? And they're like, doesn't make sense. Like, let's keep digging, and being able to have a soft place to land in that creative space is so important. And I often talk about that as like the messy middle, right? Like it's an extremely vulnerable place to be, which is like, I know what I'm doing, I know why I'm doing it, and I know that this will be a thing, but I don't know how yet, right? And so being able to work with people in that really vulnerable, open time and be able to learn safely is so important for all founders, but especially queer founders.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned a safe place to learn, Ashleigh, because it's so intimidating to be asking all of these questions where in your head you're like, well, you know, this is the first time I've ever done this, so it's always an intimidating place to be in. And and going off of Aydian's point, going into an accelerator, you have to know, you know, what you're wanting to learn, and you have to have a sense of direction of like, this is where I need help, and this is where I'm like doing really well. For us at the last startup, we had a marketplace business model where we were doing our marketing in 2 different languages. You know, we had business owners and job seekers, so we needed to hone down on like how to monetize it, because we were doing an excellent job with bringing in the users, and I was spearheading all of that, but monetizing businesses was like a huge issue for us. So that's why Techstars helped us a ton.
Amazing. I'd also like to say, if there's any questions in the chat, please let us know. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay. So maybe we talk about the dark side of accelerators a little bit. We've talked a lot about the great, wonderful things about accelerators. But sometimes they are actually hard. And sometimes you're like, God, this does not feel like a good use of my time. What do you do in those instances? How do you make it work to get out what you do need out and participate? Don't burn bridges, right? Because we need to show up. We need to be friendly. We need to put in, because that content may be great for the other people of your cohort, right? So what are some really hard parts about it, Kelly?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the thing is like, one thing I always noticed about my cohort mates in, you know, the different accelerators that I participated, but also the ones that I mentor in, the ones that do the best are the ones that put their company first, you know, always, and what they need to be doing for their company. And I can tell you that I look back and I wish I would have been a little bit more bold at times to be like, and I'm not doing that. It's not worth my time for certain aspects of it. But at the same time, you know, obviously I feel like I got a ton out of it, but the people who I saw who are just like, that serves me no purpose and I am not going to go to that, you know, they have all continued to be very successful in their spot. You know, there are occasionally the folks who, there was one guy in my cohort, I literally never saw him at 500. He never once came to the program. And obviously his business did not end up doing a whole lot of great, right? So I don't know if it was, you know, correlated or not, but in my mind it is. That's for sure, because I don't think he necessarily got the same network that a lot of us had, or had people to call on for advice, or, I don't know where else he was getting it, but he wasn't getting it out of the program, that's for sure. And so, and I've always thought like, what a waste, because somebody else could have come in and used the time too. So I also think like, just remember that when you got chosen, somebody else didn't. And so I also think this is also about being good citizens to the programs, especially if they've given you cash. Like there's an expectation that you are going to participate and be a good citizen of the program too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, come prepared with questions,
Yeah.
especially when investors or folks are coming to do these lunch and learns, and you have cohort participants that are distracted, we all are busy, right? Every single person on those calls are busy. LinkedIn the person and come up with one question, right? Like participate one thing. We all can spend that 3 minutes, because you never know when that person may come back into your life.
Ashleigh, do you mind if I like ask a question? Is that
Please? Yes. Okay. Oh my gosh.
So
yes.
I think I would love to just so I'll lay it up. I don't know, lay up, whatever it is. I'll set
sports,
and then maybe Corina and Kelly can add, and you too, Ashleigh. So like my company is a company for trans and non-binary folks. So everywhere I go, I have to say, hi, I'm Trace. This is for transgender and non-binary people. Like, and so regardless of who is in that room, who I'm talking to, I got very lucky with Generator. Everyone was very accepting. Everyone was very open. And, I only met, I think literally out of the hundreds of people I met, like 2 people were like one investor. I was just like, I don't think this is a good fit. I think that we're good. And he was like, I agree. And I just left. I was like, thanks for your time. Like, I didn't burn a bridge, but I was like, this ain't working for me. It's not working for you. Right. But like, I think just as queer people, right, like we're entering a space that is not with queer people, like, and so, I always was just like, oh, like, I don't know, like, how's my gonna feel about me? You know what I mean? How's my cohort gonna feel about the business that I have? Right. And so for me, I always had to out myself, just to even, just saying the name of my business kind of outs who I am and how I identify. So I was just curious how all of y'all felt. Like, did you felt safe in your accelerators? Like, were there people you felt safe with? Like, just like as a queer person in an accelerator program that is not geared towards queer people, like, you know what I mean? Just kind of curious about hearing a little bit about that from everyone.
Yeah, I will say that, first of all, obviously Growth Lab is like directed for us. That's where we're supposed to, shine and feel safe for sure. So there's no question there about that. But at 500, I was shocked at how diverse we were as a group, and delighted, obviously, to it. I will tell you, I think I personally had a lot of real imposter syndrome at both Growth Lab and 500 when I entered both, because I was extremely early in my business in both cases and felt like I just somehow like found the golden ticket, like Willy Wonka, and somebody mistakenly let me in. And, so I think I had to get through a lot of that. And then adding on, I'm a woman, I'm queer, all of those things. The thing for me in my queerness is I often out myself, because I probably in the first 10 minutes I'm meeting you, I'm talking about my amazing wife and how great she is, how much I love her. So that usually will pop in and people will figure it out if they don't already know. But raising is always going to be hard. So like, I think it's also one of those things where it's so important that we do recognize that, and that if it isn't going to work, like get rid of that investor and like move on from it, because the effort and the time and energy you're going to spend with these folks, you have to be like, they become like your family, in the end, when you're trying to make that final decision of like, should I sell, should I not, you got to be able to call them and trust them. So I think it's like so important to like go in, be your authentic self, and find the places that are going to be good for you on there, for sure.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I've always felt safe in accelerators, but I think similar to Kelly, I come out really fast, right? Like I'm really out and I don't accept any binaries. And it's like, being genderqueer and queer, and it's like all over my LinkedIn, it's all over my media, it's all over my stuff. So in programs, I've felt accepted, but I don't think I would have been accepted into the program had they not, right? Like in the interview, they just like wouldn't have accepted me into the program if it didn't work. But I agree with Kelly, with investors is where I've had the most problems. I had an investor one time say, "Do you always dress like that?" And I was like, uh-huh. I do, yes. And so just like any sort of gendering comments, and or appearance comments, like I'm always professional, but yeah, one day I may be really masculine and one day I may be really feminine, and all of those days I'm going to be really loud. And so it's, and my investors now, my lead investor, I told them about this one specific instance, and he's a straight cis white male, and he was like, "Oh no, absolutely not. Do not ever call him. What was his name? I want to inform all my other companies." And I was like, these are my people, right? Like the people that are automatically defending me. And so getting the right people in your camp and knowing that like they will defend me more than I will defend myself typically. And so just like saying no early, I think to your point, Aydian, is like one shed of weirdness. And I'm like, nope, absolutely not.
Well, for me, I mean, I can speak on coming from an underrepresented background. I'm a Latina. You don't see a lot of faces that look like me, especially with investors, other founders. And when we went through the Techstars Accelerator program, we did see other Latino founders, and that was really nice and special for us. And when we went through the E for All Accelerator, it also felt like a very safe space for us. But I mean, when raising money and reaching out to investors that don't particularly understand the problem that you're trying to solve, specifically, we were trying to solve the issue with employment for Latino job seekers after the pandemic, where millions got laid off. Yeah, it was hard for them to understand the problem around it. So that made it hard. But when it comes to the accelerators, I always felt very, very good.
One thing I just also want to add is I think when I look back at all of the investors I met and those who eventually invested or didn't, because I was so early that often like I was talking to people long before I was going to get a check from them, right? And the people that there were so many people that I thought on the first or second meeting that I was like, oh, I really like this person. I think we're going to, go really well. And then a few months later, I was like, this guy's an idiot. Like I don't want to work with him. Right. And I was almost grateful that it wasn't like a 2-week process because of, sometimes how I think that maybe would have changed some things. And most of my investors I knew for at least 6 months before they ever actually wrote a check, including 500 startups, my mentor there, I had already known for 6 months prior to actually even getting invited to the program. So I think like those things there's like a silver lining with like actually getting to know somebody and understand if they're going to be a good fit for you, then not. There's like one guy that I wish would have invested that didn't. And I'm like still bummed that he didn't invest out of all the people who didn't in the end,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have 30 seconds left. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you, Corina and Aydian and Kelly, for joining today. I really appreciate everyone's time. Does anyone have any parting last words?
No, thank you all so much for being here. Everybody who was watching us, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Twitter. You can follow us at the Techstars main accounts as well. And happy to chat if you have any questions about the accelerator.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was great.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I really enjoyed my time.